Right now, though, we want to talk about some of the big stories in our country. From yesterday, it's been March for Justice, the youth wing of the NDC going on that demonstration, presenting two different petitions, one to the presidency and then to Parliament as well. My guest in the studio, Alhassan Suhuyini, is Member of Parliament for Tamale North. He sits on the Lands and Forestry Committee as well as the Appointment Committee of Parliament. Joining him is Akwesi Konedu, Member of Parliament for Menchia North. He is on the Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee as well as the Health Committee of Parliament. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Mama V.
I have to start with you, Mr. Suhuyini. Yesterday you went on the March for Justice.
Yes, beautiful march it was. Good morning to my brother. Good morning to you. And good morning to our viewers, especially the very good people of the Tamale North constituency. So let me start by congratulating the organizers of yesterday's march and also thanking all those who made time to participate in that march. My special gratitude also goes to especially those who out of the windows of their offices and in their cars, on their motorbikes, cheered the protesters on. It was quite inspiring to see that. I find it an acknowledgement of the fact that this is something that needs to be done, but not all of us may have the time to do it. So if some of us have elected to do it on behalf of all of us, the little that those who didn't have the time to join could do was what they did as we marched past them, and I think that it is quite gratifying. It was beautiful. I think it's also important that we recognize the professionalism of the security agencies who were deployed yesterday to provide protection. It wouldn't.
There were no military men.
There was an attempt to introduce military men at the start of the program, but the organizers protested strongly because at the meetings they had with the police, that was not discussed, and we all do know that the military is not for internal security. And so, again...
But how do you arrive at the conclusion that there were attempts to introduce...
No, we saw some of them in their vehicles approaching the starting point. And some of the organizers, confronted the lead commander, the police commander. And after, that's why I say it is important to commend their professionalism. I mean, after the back and forth, they saw the wisdom in withdrawing the soldiers. And I think it was correct that they did, because many people, even if you heard the chants and the songs, even though much of it was directed at the commander-in-chief and the chairman of the police council, that is the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, and Dr. Bawumia, some of it was also reserved for the military, who from Ejira to Asawase to the elections in Techiman South, were responsible for the needless murders that happened. And so perhaps seeing them around, would have provoked some people, and maybe they would have said certain things that will not also go down well with them, and who knows what would have happened. So it was reasonable that the lead commanders of the police, saw the wisdom in the protest and decided to withdraw them. So all in all, it was wonderful, and I commend the National Youth Organizer of the NDC and the youth wing generally of the National Democratic Congress for pulling this off beautifully. All the national officers, not all, but majority of them were there to lend their support, and the teeming youth and women, who joined the march yesterday also deserve some commendation. And we need not to forget, I mean, as we celebrate the success of the march, we should not forget what we were protesting.
Yeah, I was just going to come to, was the objective achieved?
Well, these are not events. these kind of things build up to what is the ideal that we all expect in our country. I mean, you are not going to march in the morning for justice and have justice delivered by evening. But at least you would have pricked some conscience. You would have, through the petition you presented, made some demands that officials you hope will act on. So we gave one petition to the president, and we gave one to the Speaker of Parliament. And so these are the arms of government we expect to do something about the insecurity that we are all faced with.
Okay.
I mean, it's not just somebody's brother or somebody's husband. You never know when it's going to come very close to you and get personal.
Okay.
So it is better we all demand that the NPP, for example, in power, live up to the promise of ensuring that every Ghanaian, feels secure on the streets and in their homes. That was in their manifesto. That was the promise they made to all of us.
Okay.
And if we do not feel safe, we have to let them know that.
Let me ask your colleague what he makes of the action that, your friends from the other side took yesterday.
Let me say a very good morning to you, to the teaming viewers online and both on the silver screen now. And also let me say a very good morning to my constituents in Menchia North. Yes, I followed the march yesterday and even had interaction with some of them after the march. For me, in as much as we are all demanding what is right for ourselves, I don't have a problem with that. Because just as he ended, it could be you, it could be me. Anything can happen. But where we pass conclusive remarks as to what we are actually marching for, as the cause of what we are marching for, but they end up deviating from that. Because yesterday, I learned it was a march for justice, for people that are being killed, maimed by supposedly military men and other people. But we end up on the streets trying as much as possible to bring into the indications all others. Because I heard people speaking about the increment in petrol prices just by the day. I heard people talking about new strategies that they have and they would want to do. It sends a certain signal. One of the unfortunate utterances or one of the unfortunate comments that I feel that needs to be addressed are those that came from my own friend, the Honorable Sam George, and also from Hannah Bisu. I mean, blatantly threatening and also passing those comments that if we find anybody in military uniform, we will treat that person as a criminal. I find that very unfortunate. Because if you incite people like that, and I like the question that you asked my brother, and how can you be conclusive in terms of saying there were attempts at bringing military men to the parade?
But he was on the ground.
Perfecto. Then the comments that were passed by Sam George meant that there had been people that had held meetings the night before with an attempt of trying to bring people, military men, to march with them or protect them or whatever he thought they were coming to do. But however, you see, when we premise our argument, we premise our statement on some of these to incite people against people, that is unfair. And secondly, the individuals that you may find in the vehicles as military men may probably even may be passing by to work. And during the point of mobilization, you obviously encounter traffic. So does it mean that at any point in time that you find a military man, either passing through, passing by, the person is deployed to come, of which you do not really want the person to come? And however, we live in a volatile region now, as in terms of the subcontinent, where we have insurgencies from, and people can at any point in time infiltrate some of these demonstrations and marches, because obviously the leaders can't know every single person who is coming on the march. So even if there is that sort of an intel, and people would want to protect even you, the protesters, I believe is a right cause for anybody to do. But however, in as much as we are talking about human life, in as much as we are trying to find justice, both of us, from days of old, in all manifestos, however, talk about the protection of human life, properties, and making sure that the economy grows and prosper. But however, I have always said that consistency in some of these agitations are always the best. Because not trying to belittle the lives that have been lost. But however, these things have happened. There are several countless numbers of some of these things that have happened over the years. I believe we could have, even in government, at that time that the NDs were, the same number of people that were on the street yesterday could have protested for that lives, because every single life matters. But be that as it may, it's better late than never. We acknowledge the march, petitions have been sent. I think he says it's to prick the conscience of people. And Mama V, it is the conscience of every single person. What more can a person in authority do if we as citizens do not also support the policies that are brought about in some of these incidents? You see, there has always been a cause, and the cause is as equally important as the effect. Not to justify any brutalities by any single individual on another person, but we must also be looking and speaking to what caused some of these actions and inactions.
So I take it that you're also pretty unhappy about the involvement of the military in situations leading to, and we can settle on Nigeria because that was quite recent, leading to the death of 2 persons. You could have joined them in this protest.
You see, the death of those individuals is something that we must all regret and bemoan. The involvement of the military was on the basis of intelligence that the regional minister says he picked, and that he needed to make sure that the military go there to control it. Secondly, Mama V, we must as people not be passing conclusive remarks that the deployment of the military or what we saw culminated or they directly shot those 2 individuals. It could have been any person. Let us wait for the committee that has been set up to thoroughly examine what happened at Ejura. For us, because you see, even in the year up to some of these agitations that came up, were because we believed or were made to believe that the individual, Kaka, got killed because of certain social media agitations or social media awareness that he was embarking on.
You know, we will come to that matter as in Nigeria proper, because I don't know, did anybody conclude that way?
Yeah, it was conclusive, Mama V.
Because I know that people were talking about the things that he had been doing, but I'm not sure anybody said for a fact that he was killed because of the things that he had done.
We can all go back to the publications and the social media and all media at that time that he got killed. That I think was on the 27th, on the 28th, because he died on the 20th. And look at news portals, look at things that were said on social media, look at the reasons why people believed at that time that he was killed. You see, those are some of those issues. We all have to be a bit responsive to some of those issues.
Alhassan Suhuyini, I want to ask, because the leadership of yesterday's protest did indicate that that wasn't the only protest, that there will be future protests. I want to talk about the COVID-19 protocols. And, you know, I heard very clearly the General Secretary of the party indicating that there were people with nose masks and sanitizers, and if you didn't have, reach out and space out. But we know how it went down. There were a lot of people out there who were not respecting the protocols. It's difficult because the numbers were great. Shouldn't, based on what we have seen happen, you try to control it, but you couldn't control it 100%. Should we be allowing future protests?
Well, Mamavi, I would like to respond to a few things that he said before I answer your question. But clearly, I think that we should be afraid of this government more than we are afraid of COVID. This government has destroyed more families and more lives than COVID has done. Terribly so. And we all have friends, we all have relatives who are suffering one way or the other as a result of government policies and government decisions, and we know them. So we should be afraid of them more than COVID. And if it's going to take the risk of embracing COVID to get them to set up and do things right, I think that we will continue to take the protocols into consideration as we do these things, but we'll take that chance.
Do you honestly think that what you do out there on the streets as NDC members would change anything?
It is important, I mean, that we do what we do out there in the hope that it changes things. Because when we lose that hope, then we would have been losing hope of anything coming out of our democracy, and that would be dangerous. Because in a democracy, it is expected that, you know, government listens. And if it is a good government, I think they will listen and change some things. For example, you recall that in this country, we have had situations where when good governments were in power, demonstrations, led to changes. For example, VAT, it was as a result of demonstrations that VAT got better. For example, biometric register, it was as a result of demonstrations and protests by opposition members that we had a biometric register. So when you have good governments that are listening, that understand that democracy is not about a one-man show or a one-system show, protests lead to, changes that benefit all of us. So I hope that you are not saying that we will not experience anything because you know that this government is not listening and has shut its ears. Over the period, they have proven to be so, but I hope they will prove us wrong, along the line.
So
but
irrespective of COVID, we should still allow demonstrations such as what we saw yesterday.
And we should allow Fix the Country movement guys to also hit the streets. I'm saying that, yes, COVID is a risk, but I'm saying that we have seen effects of government policies that can be said to be worse than what COVID has done to us as a people. And so between the two risks of sitting at home and allowing this government to continue to do the wrong thing to us and taking all the protocols we are supposed to take, even though it is still going to be risky to embark on a demonstration, I will choose, the risk of confronting this government, even as I fear that I may get COVID. It is important that we do that because, you see, this government is not better than COVID. And if it is allowed to continue in the way that they are currently on, we may all just end up, dying or losing, loved ones. And that is why I think that the Fix the Country people must demonstrate. And that takes me to my initial suggestion to respond to some of the issues that he raises. You see, when you found people talking about, economic hardships and high fuel prices, you need to understand that a group of people before this demonstration had, sought to protest their discomfort as far as conditions of life, is concerned. And they had been frustrated. So if they saw a platform, they may not necessarily have even been NDC members, but if they saw a platform that gave them the opportunity to still vent those frustrations that they had, they were very much welcome. And even though the NDC organized a protest for justice, it was not exclusive to just justice.
So this was a mixed bag.
It was inclusive of all those who had other misgivings as far as our governance system is concerned.
Okay.
But the petition that was presented spoke to the reason why we march. And secondly, on the issue of the military, when you heard Sam George and Hannah Bisu in those clips, you have to understand what happened, because Sam George and others were those who were part of the negotiation for the deployment of security. And they were those who protested the inclusion of the soldiers. So they were not speaking out of, hearsay or context. They were speaking after their protest to the, leadership of the police, that their suggestion to include the military will not be tolerated.
Oh, but that was at the meeting.
No.
Were there different forms of negotiation even on the ground beyond what you
if you understand how demonstrations happen, apart from the meeting that will take place perhaps in a conference room, the discussions never end until the demonstrations are over. The organizers still speak to each other to control the crowd, even during the demonstration. When it comes to, for example, choosing routes, I'll give you a typical example. When we marched to Opebia yesterday, the Silver Star Towers, there were those who wanted to use the 37 route. But the agreement with the police was that we will go through the Stanbic Heights and then come out of the Aviation Social Center and through the Lands Commission. When the police tried to stop them and it was developing, it was degenerating, they had to call on the leadership of the organizers. So you keep talking even after the meeting.
Okay.
So it was as a result of the intention, the revelation of an intention to include the military. And we saw some of them. That Sam George and co. protested strongly to them and also told the media that we have protested this to the, what do you call it, the security agencies. And so
but what
we
do you
want
make,
you to know, when you find
aspects
military
of
among us and you see us protesting, you see us treating them as criminals, because we have already told them that we didn't agree to it. So
but just that statement that said that if we spot military people, we treat them as criminals.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement to make? That's a member of
Because
Parliament.
you see, as we speak now, even though we have information, verifiable information, that many of the MPP thugs who were in those vigilante groups have been absorbed into the security agencies, we know, especially coming from Ayawaso Wagon, that many of them wear military uniforms. We know. And when I say information that is credible, it's not information that is picked from the street. It's information that is coming, one, from the Ayawaso Wagon commission hearing, two, from the recently removed Ashanti Regional Commander of Security Boss. He said that these were boys in the vigilante groups who are now part of the national security.
Yeah, but with regards to his situation, it wasn't military.
You never know when they give them military uniforms to wear, like it happened in the Ayawaso, because they had security gadgets on them. And you never know when they will add a uniform to them. So when we say that we don't want them there, it is for these suspicions that we have of some of them. And so
Okay.
if it was defied, that's why I'm saying we must comment the security arrangement that was put in place. Let us not go into the ifs, because they saw the wisdom in the protest.
Let me ask Mr. Konadu, because you raised that issue. What do you make of the explanation that he's just given?
He's even made it worse. If you listen to the audio very well, and if you listen to Sam George very well, he never made credence to a meeting that they had with the police or the security in terms of the people that they were bringing. But he said, we have information that yesterday night, members in government or something have met, and that they would want to bring military people on the grounds, and that if they bring them or if we see them, we are going to treat them as criminals. I mean, why must you say that? You say we should not go to the ifs and buts, but that is the same thing that we are doing. We don't know when they are going to give them military uniforms to wear. We don't know when we are going to do that. Mama, as a protester or as a demonstrator, one of the most important things that the security agencies can do for you is to make sure that they protect you whilst you're on the street marching. Because, as you just said, that people may have joined because they felt like, oh, you are articulating their views for them, and that they can join you in also articulating their views and vent out what they term as their frustration. The same way that people who may not agree with you, like 25 years ago, when people mounted on horseback, the ACDRs, attacked people who were on demonstrations, could also happen. So therefore, it is the duty of the security, picking intel, credible intel that are verifiable, not the intels that my brother will tell me, oh, they can verify. But you and I know that between your intel and that of the police or the security agencies, that would hold more credence. If they pick that and they believe that it's appropriate for them to add whatever groupings of security personnel that they would want to have, as a protester, you cannot say, we don't want that. I mean, if we do that, at the end of that is why the police would therefore say, we cannot guarantee your safety at this time to demonstrate, and therefore hold on the demonstrations. When that happens also, we tell ourselves that, oh, the security services are Ghanaians and government is behind them, Ghanaians. But at the end of it, we cannot jeopardize the security of the ordinary person also, in as much as you would want to protest and vent out. If I don't have a problem with anybody protesting or wanting to hit the streets with whatever agitations, whatever frustrations, whatever reasons that they would want to go on the street. But the most important thing for us that, at the end of the day, just as we are here now, commending the security personnel and the police for making sure that yesterday's demonstration, we never heard that 5 people are dead. We never heard somebody has been brutalized. People have been arrested and jailed and that kind of. At least it's the same thing that when we are negotiating with them or when we are sitting with them to make sure that we find routes and ways to go. You see, when the police determine, and even I'm just hearing, when they determine that you pass through this area so that at least in terms of traffic situation and all other security arrangements, people still became defiant of that. In this vein, would you tell me that if the police would therefore would want to use what they would term as their reasonable force to make sure that people get in line, would then be here talking about some of these things. But the most important thing for me is that as people and as leaders, our utterances must be such that it doesn't incite our people against the institutions. That will not be fair.
Answer the question of the adherence to the COVID protocols and future protests.
Mama, for me, as I sit here, I've always said I'm on the health committee, and I've always said we must be able to ease ourselves into what I term as the old normal. I like it when they went on demonstrations. Just oppose that with some funerals that they criticized and comment against. I always say, when we get into our markets, look at the number of people in these markets. You see, can we then say, because that we have all of these numbers in the market, and I understand that the new variant of the virus is as harsh as it can be, and that we obviously cannot lose our guard. The most important thing for us now is to be able to adhere to the protocols and make sure that at least we have our nose masks on, we do the regular sanitization of our hands, washing our hands and the rest, so that we can ease ourselves into
Is it not because our leaders blatantly broke the protocols? That's why this protest was allowed to happen?
No. Mama V, you see, if people do not try and experiment, and I'm using and choosing my words very carefully, and experiment, how then do we find...
So is that what we're doing?
We must at some point in time, even go to the UK now. What did Boris Johnson just say about 2 days ago? That it is now or never. Because there should be a time that we can ease ourselves.
But for us, leadership hasn't said anything concrete.
But you see, you do not want to hear that leadership would definitely say there is this concrete thing that we are doing.
You're
but
just pointing at the UK.
Yes, no problem.
And that's a plan.
Yes, that is a plan, no problem. But leadership can also have a plan that let us observe from afar, let us see, let us leave it, let us hold it a bit loose and see how it is going to fall. And that if it's going to fall in a certain magnitude, then we can pull ourselves up back again. But leadership hasn't said that, you see, when we ask that people adhere to these protocols, Mama V, and put on the nose masks and the rest, how well can any leader move from his office and come back here to tell you, Mama, you don't have your nose masks on, and that put it on. And if you don't put it on, would that supposed to go back to hit the leader? That is a problem that we are facing. We as people must also take that bold decision and adhere to some of these protocols.
Okay, we have to move on, but I've got to ask you, so what is Parliament doing about the petition that you presented? I know there was an issue of, is it going to be referred to the legal committee or whichever committee? What has been agreed?
I think it was a petition to the Speaker of Parliament, so he is reserved with the decision as to what to do with the petition. But given the demands that were made, I can see if he is minded to, if Speaker is minded to, a possibility of the petition being referred to a number of committees and not just one committee. For example, if you want the implementation of the Ayawaso Wagon, commission report, it will have to go, a short report, thank you. It will have to go to a number of committees like the judiciary.
But sorry, I mean, government issued a white paper, what it adopted. So what for instance, you want Parliament to do about the report itself, the original reports?
Well, first of all, we had issues with the white paper that was issued. And secondly, even those in the white paper that government admitted and agreed it will implement, it hasn't. So the call is for us to revisit that report and discuss not just what was left out, but even what we were told will be done in the white paper, which hasn't been done. So we think that it is worth calling on government to look at, if for nothing at all, fulfilling the promise they made in the white paper about some of the actions that they were going to take. We also have called for a bipartisan parliamentary probe into the murders in Techiman, Savulugu and others. So that is a matter that can also be referred to another committee, say the Security Committee, and the Security Committee will advise the House as to whether the bipartisan probe is worth it or not. I do know that there's already a motion that myself, together with Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa and the Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu, have filed, calling for a probe into some of these murders.
Okay.
So the Speaker is reserved with the decision on what to do with the petition and how to treat it.
Okay, I guess we'll see in the coming days how this all unfolds.